Hello,
Okay,
Sarah. Not good morning, not good evening, but hello. It's lovely to see you. And I'm so glad to meet you. Educator
very nice
Voices
to meet
is
you
such
too.
an excellent way to introduce educators to one another in both print form and, of course, via audio and Q&As. So why don't you tell the language educator readers, our ACTFL members, a little bit about yourself, just to put it in context.
So we could go with buenas, right? That covers all
Yes.
times of day.
Buenas, tienes razón.
Muy buenas, yeah. So I'm Sarah Dutton, and I'm currently working at Elizabethtown College. It's a small liberal arts college in central Pennsylvania. It's beautiful, about 2,000 students. And I've been there for 2 years. I came in as a visiting lecturer and was able to grow a graduate program in medical Spanish, a certificate program in medical Spanish. And so I'm teaching both at the residential college, undergraduate students, and through the graduate SGPS graduate program, which is really exciting. I teach Spanish language, and I teach the medical Spanish, and I teach grammar, and I teach literature, and the beginner levels and the intermediate levels, and so a lot of different levels. I also teach a first year seminar and about gingerbread because I'm also an award-winning amateur gingerbread artist, and gingerbread teaches a lot of those skills that we want our first year students to develop. And so just a lot of different things on campus in with a lot of different students. And I've had a lot of opportunity to be brave and try things out. And last year was given the opportunity via a disruptive teaching grant to experiment a little bit. And I chose to experiment with some AI. And that's what brings me to our conversation today.
Yes, indeed. I was really intrigued by how you chose to utilize generative AI in the classroom. I get, as the editor of TLE, I get a great many articles about utilitarian uses of
Mhm.
AI, how to create a syllabus, how to do your reporting, how to do grades, how to do that. And I even get tech tips about
Mhm.
how to write prompts, which is very useful. And I publish a lot about AI because it's this huge elephant in the room, and there's much trepidation at many
Yes.
different levels about generative AI. Will it replace me as a teacher? Will the
Mhm.
students cheat using it? How do I know that I'm teaching properly? I mean, it's just a plethora of really difficult questions. But I was intrigued by the fun way that you chose to actually leverage what that does to examine literature. So I'm going to advise listeners to read that experience in the classroom
Mhm.
because you described it so beautifully, and you can start back there. But I would like to ask you if you've done any, well, describe briefly what you did and in the article with generative AI with your
Mhm.
literature students. But then I want you to do a little bit of follow-up and tell me what you've done since then with
Sure.
this admittedly powerful and yet a little bit
Yes.
terrifying tool.
Yes. One of the first things I tell my students when we're playing with AI is always say thank you, because you never know in the long run. This whatever we think about AI, saying, well, AI can't yet, right? It's this incredible tool, and it is terrifying. All change, I think, is scary at some level, and and there's so many good things to come out of it. And I love the utilitarian pieces. So many of the tasks take less time. It allows me to do more of the things that I love as an educator, like experimenting, right? So a lot of weird circumstances brought me to a point where I was a bit stuck and needed something to challenge my advanced grammar and composition students in the fall. And I thought, I'm just going to see what this looks like. And because I really didn't think I had to worry about it. There's so many things that come along, keystones and state testing and all of these things that don't have never applied to me as a language educator, even when I wasn't teaching in a high school. And so I tend to sometimes just kind of smile and nod at these big overarching things and not worry about it. And I was very much in that camp with AI. And then I sat down and I just put a prompt in Spanish, and the response was not only really good language, but it was actually a really good answer to the question. And I thought, okay, right. I was thinking about La Celestina. I was like, Callisto, good or bad, right? And it was this really interesting response. And I thought, okay, I'm in trouble. Like, we're in trouble. Am I in trouble? What do I do with this? And so ended up having my students take a prompt and ask Gen AI to respond and or what so I'll ask them to respond to a prompt. And then when they responded to the prompt, did an essay in class, then I did the same thing in two different AIs and had two different answers. And then I typed everything that they had written, super fast typer, and then I distributed them and had them critique the essays. And what they didn't know is that I had taken two of theirs out and replaced them with the two AI essays. And so they had no idea and made the assumption that the essays, and really, I mean, these are upper level, 300 level students, many of them majors, most of them minors. And so they were able to do really excellent work. And so was this, yeah, both of these platforms. And so they had no idea until the big reveal, which is really exciting, especially because there were some errors in what had been produced. And so we were able to have this really rich discussion about prompt generation, which is, I think, the first skill that we can teach, right? We're all still learning this, and it really is incumbent on us to be able to learn enough to teach our students, right? We're all lifelong learners. We need to keep learning in order to, you learn so much of what you have to teach. So we need to learn how to use this, which really means like playing around with it. And I am a big believer in play. And that's what it's about. There are so many opportunities for fun, for wild experimentation, because you can use AI to make the rubric for the excellent assignment and then take that 45 minutes, an hour, and play around and imagine the what might be and come up with things. And yeah, our students are using it. That's it. And some students will use it to cheat. I don't want to be the cheat police. I don't that that's not what I started teaching for. I want to be able to help them develop the skills, the language skills. I do language, I do research, I do study, I do conversation, I do interpersonal development. All of these skills that we're helping our students with, both formal curriculum and hidden curriculum, and it really is, how do we best prepare them? So we need to embrace it. And
How else
I'm
have you
I'm a,
used it in the classroom? Have you used it again
so
in the classroom in a different way?
yeah, I so this semester, the spring semester, I taught an advanced literature course. And so there's a narrative unit and a poetry unit and a drama unit. And we had read a drama it's called Resguardo Personal by Paloma Pedrero. And it's essentially a two-person play, the interplay between people who have been married, they've lived together, and then they've broken up. And so it's very dramatic. There's all of this relationship stuff, which college students are in, some of them are in the midst of this or have gone through it. And so they're always very interested in it. And the play itself is after the breakup, another conversation, and it's antagonistic and complicated, and the big dramatic reveal at the end. And so we were talking about how you can learn a lot about characters through what they say, and then sort of expanding that back. I said, okay, I would like you to write a scene in the life of these two characters that predates this work. What would that look like? And well, does that like the day before? Nope, whenever, right? The day that they met, the day they got married, the day that he found out she was cheating, like whatever it is, you decide what speaks to you in terms of the history that we've been able to suss out from this play, and write a small scene. And so most of them went, yeah, right. And like, how many lines? And these are upper level students, but how many lines? How long does that have to be? And I said, okay, if you want to, you can use Gen AI. And I gave them a list because I've been learning. I've been attending all kinds of online. There are lots of free, open online webinars that are happening everywhere all the time. And so I've been learning, finding other platforms. And so I gave them a list. I said, these are the ones that I've played around with. You can do it. And we talked a little bit about prompt generation. And then once you've got that response, then what do you do with it? And so going through and checking and making sure that it follows the things that you're looking for, and then adding yourself back into it, and really kind of, we talk about code switching, right? It's almost a code switching opportunity. We take what Gen AI has given us, we add ourselves into it, and it becomes this sort of shared production, right? This creative production. And so I had 9 students in the class. 8 chose the Gen AI route, and one decided he loves drama and he wanted to write it. And so the day that it was actually a couple of days. They brought their works in, printed out. They got to choose the people that would play the roles. Some of it was just the 2 primary characters. Some students decided in their prompts to introduce other characters, right? Which was a thing we hadn't even discussed, but that was fine. It was fairly open-ended. And it was interesting, right? Because they get a chance to do the prompt engineering, they get a chance to see what's produced, and they get a chance, then I get a chance to see the things that they take away from it deeply, right? And then so one student one student had um the 2 characters were meeting for the first time, and it turns out one was a reporter and the other was a spy, right? And so the roles that they have in the actual original work, that's just the cover roles, but they're, spy and reporter. And this is the kind of literature that he likes to read, not the literature we were reading, but he was able to kind of bring that in and have that experience as part of the class. And so I got to know a little bit more about him. um, we talked a little bit about the differences between what Gen AI had created and then what the student who had written it had created. I think there was so much respect for that student. He was one of my more quiet students, a little hesitant to speak in class, but this was an opportunity for his voice to be heard and to get really positive feedback from his colleagues in the class. So the whole experience was, again, it was fun, right? They had a good time because they didn't feel huge pressure about, the conjugation of the predicate verb perfect here, and have I gotten all the subjunctive things that I need, right? Those things that prevent us from loving the language, right? I want my students to love the language as much as I do. And that's never going to come through, breaking down if then clauses, even though I love grammar. They just don't love it like I do, and that's okay. But it's these moments where they get to express themselves in the language with this tool helping them to do that, and then they're playing with it, right? They're learning how to use it, and yeah, and be creative in different ways. That's one of the things about my students. And with the gingerbread, all of my students, if you ask students if they're creative in a college classroom and you've got 10 students, you might have one that says, yes, I'm creative. And that breaks my heart. The act of speaking is a creative act, right? We are all creative, and you're speaking in 2 different languages. You're doubly creative, but we don't let ourselves think that we are. And I really think Gen AI is a way to encourage creativity in ourselves and also in our students.
Do you think that this creative use of Gen AI to enhance the sense of creativity in students might be utilizable at a level below college level, at the high school level, middle school, and even with I have a sense that even the youngest students, 4th graders, are
Mm-hmm.
already fooling around with Gen AI
Mm-hmm.
in one way or another. Do you think that that would be appropriate, that educators could come up with their own ideas on how to actually embrace this, but even in ways that feel like cheating, like aren't we ever going to make them actually write on their own and to speak on their own?
Yeah. I think if we look at Gen AI as augmentative, right? Of course we need to encourage them speaking and writing on their own. And we can include this tool as a springboard to, get those creative juices flowing. So, talking about elementary school kids, when my children were in elementary school, they created the most beautiful, extensive, gorgeous worlds in Minecraft and in Roblox. And like,
That's right.
really went in and you could say, well, they could build with Legos, just give them some wooden blocks. I mean, they did that too, right? But they had so many opportunities to go into this world and craft it the way they wanted to. And they jumped in and they were so much better than I was, right? I don't know. I all of these games I would play long enough to say this is not for me, and that's okay, right? But they're digital natives, and they just jump in, and this is part of their landscape. That landscape is part of their learning landscape, right? And so they're ready for it. They're going to use it. They're already using it. We are all already using it, I think, whether we realize it or not. And so, finding ways for students to, especially, elementary students, especially thinking about, some of those visual engines where you can say, I want a picture and these are the things I want it to have. And thinking about, some of those beginning literacy things, asking really good pointed questions. That's prompt development, right? Thinking about leveraging words and being careful about the words and, expanding vocabulary. And I mean, you could give a list of vocabulary words, advanced vocabulary words, and say, create a short story about two characters using these vocabulary words. And then ChatGPT or Gen AI or, Pi or whatever, it's going to put those into context, and then students can look at it. I mean, that's a great way to study vocabulary, because vocabulary lists, this means this and this, that doesn't work, but put it into context and have it mean something. And then they're going to remember it, that longer term acquisition, right? I just think the possibilities are as endless as the valid fears, right? And it's
Yes.
here. It really, it's like, it's like when it snows. I live in Pennsylvania. And so when it snows, it's like, okay, well, we've got a foot of snow outside, and you can either choose to be miserable or you can choose to be excited. But either way, you still have a foot of snow outside, right? It is snowing. It is a blizzard of the technology. And we really, that's another thing that we can teach our students. We can either, I think, kind of curl in on ourselves and insist and be very prescriptivist and say this is the way things should be, or we can really open up and say this is the most extraordinary technology of my lifetime, certainly. And I've been around since long before. I mean,
Me too.
right? you know and so yeah, so it's extraordinary. And I am an early and enthusiastic adopter in favor of us learning as educators and being able to assist our students in leveraging this extraordinary tool.
Sarah, thank you so much. That was an extraordinary peek into the angst that is um, so widespread within the
Mhm.
language education profession. Thank you for stating it so clearly and for taking a very positive and very proactive approach to this. I've really loved talking with you. I hope that all of our members enjoy meeting you, not just in print, but also in this manner. Thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate
quite
it.
welcome. It's been my pleasure.